And what this all taught us is we really need to listen. We really need to listen to what's going on, and that you can change it, that you can make a difference. And I think Rachel, when she stepped forward, she did. She sent that message loud and clear to so many young, very young women.
Hello and welcome to the One Girl Revolution podcast. My name is Kate Bryan, and I'm the host of the One Girl Revolution podcast and founder of our nonprofit, One Girl Revolution. One Girl Revolution is a multimedia platform, a podcast, and a nonprofit dedicated to highlighting the stories of inspiring women and girls who are changing the world through their lives. Please make sure that you're following us on social media, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at One Girl Revo. Subscribe to us on YouTube at One Girl Revolution, and you can find all of our podcast episodes, videos, social media links, and so much more on our website at onegirlrevolution.com. That's the number one, girlrevolution.com. On this week's episode of the One Girl Revolution podcast, I'm joined by Pat Rosen Meyers. Pat is a force to be reckoned with, a woman of many talents, and a woman who is changing the world through so many aspects of her life. Pat is one of the attorneys representing the survivors of Larry Nassar. You might remember him as the Olympic gymnast doctor who has sexually assaulted more than 500 women and girls. Pat is continuing to work to make sure that justice is served in Larry Nassar's case and for all those who are involved. Pat also serves as president of the board of the Shades of Pink Foundation, an organization that financially supports those who are going through breast cancer treatments. Pat joins the One Girl Revolution podcast to share her own life journey. She talks about her work as an attorney, what it's like to be standing alongside the survivors of Larry Nassar and fighting alongside them for justice to be served. She talks about her work with Impact100 and how she got connected with the Shades of Pink Foundation, the incredible work that they're doing to support people through their breast cancer journeys, and how she became president of the board of the Shades of Pink Foundation. We also talk about her interest in photography, other aspects of her life, and so much more. This episode is a great one, and I'm so excited to share it with you. So without further ado, here's Pat. Pat, welcome to the One Girl Revolution podcast.
Thank you for having me this morning.
I am so excited to have you, and I just have been so blown away learning about your story through you. We got connected through this great group, M3, and so I'm grateful to be connected with you, and I'm so excited to hear more about your story and more about your great work. But before we get into your story, I'd love to hear from you. Who is a One Girl Revolution in your life? Who is a woman or girl that's inspired you?
Well, this is probably not going to start off that well. I say, you know what? I don't have one. I have several, and it's, I'm going to go like present to past.
I love it.
Presently, my 93-year-old mother who raised 6 kids, and her goal in life when she graduated from high school was to take care of Eddie. That was my dad. And they were married for 63 years. So that she completed her goal. She had 6 beautiful kids. We have this beautiful family. So I start with my mom. And then I have 3 sisters. My 2 sisters inspire me every day. I'm the oldest girl, but one's a captain in the Navy, followed her passion. Another is a liaison for the school district in Ohio, again, followed her passion. Then I go to my sister-in-laws. I have 3 wonderful sister-in-laws. One was the ambassador to Honduras, again, followed her dream. Another sister-in-law works with my brother in a very successful business. That's what she wanted to do. And then I had my youngest sister-in-law, not daughter-in-law, sister-in-law, passed away in 2019 from a battle with cancer. And the strength that she gave our entire family was amazing. So yeah, it wasn't just one.
Yeah. And I feel like that's all of us though. There isn't just one. There are so many amazing women in our lives, and women who have unfortunately passed away who still inspire us. Their legacy lives on through us. And I'm sure that's your sister-in-law too, that her legacy lives on through you and lives on through the work that you're doing. So
Yeah.
I think that your story is like most of ours, that there isn't just one. There are so many women that inspire us on a daily basis. So you shared a little bit about your story in that answer, but I'd love to rewind and talk about a little bit about who you are, where you're from. I know you're one of 6 kids, but I'd love to hear a little bit more about your life journey.
So I grew up in Ypsilanti, middle class town, and 6 kids in our family, and parents who always kept all of us very active. Now I realize that as a parent myself, that was probably to get 6 kids out of the house. And, but they did it in such a healthy way. They required really all of us to play sports. And so actually, the 3 girls, which we don't let the 3 boys forget, we're all in our high school athletic hall of fame because we just excelled in sports. That wasn't a thing to do, back in the 70s. So I look at that as very, that was an influencing time, persuasive time in my life that we learned, education was important, working hard was important, following my passion was important. And so, so I graduated Ypsilanti High School. Our Catholic school had closed down. I graduated high school in 1975 and went to Michigan State University and thought I wanted to be in human resources, but realized very quickly that I did not think I could fire people. So the aptitude test that we took way back then, I don't know if they do it anymore. I had an interest in law, so I thought, I'll be a paralegal. My dad said, why not a lawyer? Introduced me to a good friend of his who is the chief judge in Washtenaw County Circuit Court. And he mentioned that his daughter was a lawyer. So I went to law school. And then when I came out, I thought I wanted to work in the corporate world and quickly learned I did not. And so most of my career, I have worked in personal injury, litigation work, mostly medical negligence. And so here I am. I have a son who's 27 and a beautiful husband. So
yeah, that's amazing. That's amazing. Well, I think our lives are such a journey. Sometimes when I was talking to a couple of college students over the weekend, a couple of cousins of mine that are in college, and they were talking about just being 18 and 19 and trying to figure out what they want to do. And I just was like, life is a journey. You never know. Sometimes you start college, or sometimes you even start your career or your 30s or 40s. Like, I love the stories where people have these epiphany moments later on in life and they're like, actually, I want to do something completely different, or I want to be an artist or go back to school. Right. So I think life is a journey, and yours is totally that. So you've done so many different things in your law career, but one of the things that people would know of your work, I guess, the best is this really big case, the Larry Nassar case in Michigan. I would love for you to talk a little bit about that. People that listen to this podcast would be familiar with Rachel Denhollander. I will post her episode in the show notes of this episode so people can go back and listen. But for people that aren't familiar with the Larry Nassar case, would you mind sharing a little bit about it and just sharing about your involvement in that case?
Sure. So, the Larry Nassar case, and originally it was Larry Nassar and Michigan State University. It was a sexual abuse case that he had been abusing what we call now the survivors, not victims. The survivors really since 1998, we learned. And in, I believe it was 2017, he was convicted of those charges. And from the civil side, over 500 women have come forward indicating that they had been abused by Larry Nassar. There were 2 waves to the civil litigation, the first 300, and that was spearheaded by Rachel. And talk about one woman who changed the lives of so many by just the fact that she went to the Indy Star Reporter. She gave the rest of the 499 women the courage to come forward and to speak. And we know there are so many more that just couldn't do it. It's a very emotional, intimate disclosure. And yeah, so the cases against Michigan State University and Larry Nassar specifically have been resolved. Both Wave 1 and Wave 2 were resolved. Presently, we're in the bankruptcy court with USA Gymnastics and the Olympic Committee, who has sanctioned USAG. When USAG was named in the lawsuit, they filed for bankruptcy, and so the proceedings moved there. We are after, that was in 2018, and we are just now bringing that to conclusion, that we have come up with a global settlement that all parties have agreed to, and now it's into a facilitation stage where each of the victims are supplying information to a facilitator, and he will be deciding the compensation for each.
Yeah. I think that story is so powerful. Like you mentioned, Rachel Denhollander standing up and speaking up, but then each woman too that stood up and spoke up, they gave the other women courage. And so it created this army of survivors, like you said, too. I think Rachel opened the floodgates, but then each woman like kind of poured more kerosene, I guess, on this blazing fire. And it's given so many other women too, like women that aren't even involved, and everyone really. Like, I know there are men that have been affected by different situations like this. And so it gives everybody courage if somebody stands up. And so it's such a powerful thing to watch. And I know it's heartbreaking for these women to step forward. And I'm sure it's been difficult for you even working on these cases too.
Yeah, it has. I had really I'm going to say it was a fortunate experience, but it was a very sad one. One of my clients actually spoke in front of the board of trustees at Michigan State when we were trying to resolve this second wave, which I have to say, fortunately, our legislature, and I don't believe it happened anywhere else in the country, did open up a window after that first. The Wave 1 did open up a 90-day window to allow additional survivors to file suit. And that's how Wave 2 came about. Little did they know there were going to be 169 more women, that came forward at that time. But part of it was convincing Michigan State to do the right thing in so many ways, not just in compensation. And one of my clients, who was really very hesitant in the beginning to come forward, agreed to talk in front of the board of trustees. And I think that was a little bit of a changing point for her, that she finally, she now realized she was a public figure. She realized that she was speaking not only on her own behalf, but on behalf of all the other survivors. And, early 20s, that was a big step for her. And, but what we did the night before is we were going to meet with a few of the women that were going to speak at the meeting the next day. And I cannot tell you how many people showed up from around the country to support those 5 women that were going to be speaking in front of the board of trustees. And the synergy that happened in that room, I still get teary-eyed about it. They share a bond that none of us will ever understand. So,
well, and I think we all have I think we all have a responsibility to stand with our sisters too and support them. And so maybe if you're listening and you haven't been through something like that, there are so many things that we can do to show our support, to be educated, to learn about what's going on with this case or so many other situations. I feel like I see stories like that online and elsewhere and on the news on a daily basis, which is so heartbreaking. But we can do what we can to raise awareness, to support our sisters when women speak up, and anybody speaks up to talk about these types of things that are going on. We need to support them and show our support in little ways. It doesn't have to be, we don't have to drop everything and drive to Lansing to necessarily show our support, but sending them little notes, because this is a journey that these women will be on for the rest of their lives too. Because as you know, once somebody speaks up about something like that, and sharing, some of these women were so young when they were getting up there and speaking, and they're so brave, but that's going to be something that they're going to carry with them the rest of their lives.
Well, for sure. They are going to carry it through. And I think it's a step in that process of not only healing, but making a difference. And it's little things that people do that you don't realize who's listening. And what this all taught us is we really need to listen. We really need to listen to what's going on, and that you can change it, that you can make a difference. And I think Rachel, when she stepped forward, she sent that message loud and clear to so many young, very young women.
If you're enjoying this episode of the One Girl Revolution podcast, please leave us a review and share this with your friends and family. The One Girl Revolution podcast is available on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, YouTube, or wherever you are listening to the podcast right now. Please subscribe, leave us a review, and share. And her family is amazing too. I was thinking so much about all these families that stepped forward with these women too. It takes an army. I know there were women that maybe were standing alone, but then they had all their sisters supporting them. But it was really powerful and inspiring to see families stepping forward and saying, I didn't know that this happened, or, Rachel's husband stepping up and supporting her in that too, because they all then become spokespeople on this topic too. So, but yeah, thank you so much, Mary Pat, for all that you do to support these women. And I encourage everybody who's listening to read Rachel's book, listen to her podcast episode, listen to some of the survivors, their voices. It's so heartbreaking, but also we need to know that these types of things happen everywhere. And unfortunately, they're happening in schools, or happening in churches, or happening everywhere in society. And so we need to do what we can to spread awareness, raise awareness, and do better, and challenge people in the world to do better.
And that's exactly it. We have to challenge. We have to challenge everyone to, if they see a wrong, to try to make it right. Because we now know University of Michigan cases. Those weren't women. Those were men. Yeah. Those were young boys. Right. So it's everywhere.
Yeah. Mary Pat, with your experience working with, and I know, I'm not asking you to speak for your clients, but just from your own experience and seeing these different stories and reading these experiences and working with these women, what would you say to somebody who is maybe struggling right now? Maybe they went through something similar and they're just looking for healing, or looking for the courage to stand up and speak up. Just from your own personal experience, what would you say to those women?
Well, I do have to reflect on what many of these women did in the Michigan State cases. They talk to someone, and if they aren't believed, which so often is the case, maybe seek counseling. There are anonymous ways of reporting things, and I know the breaking interviews with the Larry Nassar cases, several women came forward and were dismissed. And it took that one interview with one female detective that said, this isn't right. And then it started to open up. And then with Rachel coming forward too, so it's, and it's scary. That is one thing that is across the board. Every single one of them were scared to come forward. They were dismissed. There is an environment, I'm going to say it's still present, of to not believe. If someone is struggling, seek counseling. Reach out anonymously if they don't feel comfortable putting their name out there yet. So many of our survivors couldn't even talk to their parents about it. And they should probably be the first line, or a trusted friend who can help them build up the courage to continue. Because you use the word journey early on about our own lives. Navigating something like this is a journey. Yeah. There's all those stages, and I don't know them all. Denial. Didn't happen to me. Oh my gosh, it did happen to me. Ooh, now I'm angry. Now I'm embarrassed. Now I feel shame. Now I feel guilt. So it's a process. And so I guess that would be not my advice. Just to know that it's a process, it's normal, and find someone that will listen.
Yeah, talk to somebody is so important. I think we all need community in our lives. And if we learned anything over the past couple of years, we need someone to talk to about everything that's going on in our lives. And, I think it's important for all of us too to also listen. So if somebody is sharing something like that, to be a listening ear and be supportive, and help them process it or help them get connected to somebody that can actually help the situation. And with
Yeah.
regards to Larry Nassar's case, I just think about cases like that. And had no one spoken up about it, had not one of those women spoken up about it, he would still be doing the same thing that he's doing. And so I think also for us to take that on ourselves and say, I need to speak up. If something happened to you, you need to speak up about it, because you could help and save other people from the same type of trauma.
Yeah.
So
And so many of the survivors too, when they would hear about, the 17-year-old that's coming forward now, knowing that she was abused when she was 12 or 13. So a lot of the older ones were saying just that. Oh gosh, if I would have had a louder voice, like some did speak up, and even those that are publicly out there said, gosh, if I just was stronger about it, they all kind of put it on themselves as part of that journey. But yeah, it's important, because if it's happening to them, it's probably happening to others.
yeah. Well, I want to switch gears a little bit because we have a lot of things that I want to talk to you about. I want to talk about Impact 100. So you founded the Oakland County chapter here in Michigan. What can you tell me about Impact 100, and what does Impact 100 do?
Okay. Yeah, first I was a founding board member. I was like the third person that joined. So Impact 100 is it's international now. Actually, that's somebody you may want to talk about. Wendy Steele had this, and she has Traverse City roots. She's now down in Florida, but had the idea of bringing women together, and it's all women. It's a collective giving. I don't know if we call them circles now, but it's all women. They give $1,000, and then they give grants in their community that are impactful. So the idea was to give $100,000 grants back to the community. So what Impact 100 Oakland County does is primarily serves nonprofits in Oakland County. There are also, in Michigan alone, there's a Impact 100 Macomb County, Impact Metro Detroit, which covers Wayne, Oakland, Macomb County, and then Impact Traverse City. And actually, the Impact 100 Global Conference will be held in Detroit in June 2023.
Oh,
So,
cool.
yeah. So Impact 100 Oakland County started in 2015 and has given over $1 million to the Oakland County nonprofit community.
Wow, that's amazing. Is
Yeah.
there
So,
an organization or individual, like I'd love to hear a story from you just through the work that you've done with Impact 100. Is there a organization or an individual that was helped through this that kind of touched your heart in a special way?
Oh gosh, they all do. Because I have to tell you, there are two in particular, and I'll tell you why. But the process how Impact 100 works is, all the members give the money, but then there's this grant review process. 5 finalists are picked in different categories, and then those 5 finalists talk at an annual meeting for 5 minutes. I mean, every year we'd say, "Oh my gosh, how do you pick?" Because you only have enough to give away 2 grants, but I had the fortunate position on the board. I was president for a couple of years, but I was the grant liaison. So I was the one that got to give the money to the grant recipients. And it's just hard not to develop these personal relationships with these people because what they're doing is such good work. And so here's my 2. Kids Kicking Cancer. An organization in Southfield, Michigan. It teaches martial arts to children battling cancer or severe disease. And it has expanded into teaching the parents also means of healing and ways to deal with the stress, but also I think their slogan is to spread the light. So not only do they learn how to breathe, I think breathing is their thing, how to breathe and how to heal through martial arts. It's to spread that light to others so they too can heal. So, and the few people that I deal with there are just amazing. Cindy Cohen, Mark Cohen, Rabbi G, amazing people. The other one would be Rainbow Connection. Whatever reason, you just build this affinity. So Rainbow Connection, the grant that we gave to Rainbow Connection was for expenses for parents, for those incidental expenses associated with their severely ill child. So that was one aspect of what they do. The other part is they grant wishes for severely ill children. And again, how could you not?
Yeah.
Yeah. So there's so many, I have to tell you. Everybody, but I'd say those two rise to the top for me. So.
I'm like sitting here taking notes, Mary Pat, because I'm like, I need to reach out to these organizations and see more about their work. And I'm sure you have so many stories and so many women that I should interview for One Girl Revolution too. So I'm going to be following up with you on all of that. Let's switch gears again, because again, we're just there's so much to talk about with regards to everything that you do. You do so much to make the world a better place. And I'm so grateful for you for everything that you do. How did you get connected to Shades of Pink?
So I, I love photography. I do photography on the side as well.
Yeah.
And my neighbor, who's the executive director for Shades of Pink, was one of my neighbors, and I volunteered to do the photography at their annual, their signature event is a zoo walk, in the spring, and thousands of people. And she asked me if I would photograph the people. And I did. I took along a good friend of mine, and James and we just had so much fun. And what I learned about the organization was, so there's survivors of breast cancer. There are teams put together to bring awareness to what Shades of Pink does. But they just had the most, it was very emotional. I guess I'm an emotional person. People would get together and, they have their team names, and, one was walking for Bev's boobs, or, or in memory of, or, and then some of the most touching photos I have are every survivor proudly wore a sash, and the hugging and the support that they gave to each other. And, and I heard Dr. Pamela Benitez speak, who's one of the co-founders of Shades of Pink, and she's so dynamic. And I just had no idea. Every one of us are touched by breast cancer, whether personally, a family member, friend. I had no idea the incidental expenses that go along with a breast cancer diagnosis and during treatment. And in COVID time, I became president of Shades of Pink 2020. Middle of COVID, women were losing their jobs, their husbands or, significant others were losing their jobs. Children were not in school. So now we had, childcare expenses, so oftentimes there's a choice between, do I pay the mortgage or do I pay for treatment? And so that's what Shades of Pink does. We pay for temporary emergency financial assistance while the patient is going under breast cancer treatment, and to help meet those everyday living expenses. And we pay the vendors directly, or the creditors directly, like the mortgage company or the car payment company or the insurance company, so they can continue their insurance. Mm-hmm. So I know the question was, how did I get involved? So
it's just an amazing organization. And I encourage everybody who's listening to check it out. And we'll talk about it later, how people can support your work. But yeah, how did you get connected? So you're taking photos at the zoo.
Yeah. And then Carla, the executive director, asked if I would want to join the board. At the time, I believe I was still on the Impact board. And so I waited until my time ran up with on the Impact board. And so I joined the Shades of Pink board, and I would say it was in 2 months, maybe 4. I raised my hand to be president. And it's just an amazing group of people that we have a strategic plan in place now. All the wheels are turning and we're just growing exponentially. So it's just really been, and here's the one part. It's fun to be a part of this board. And that was a really hard thing for me to admit early on when I was doing other charitable work. Like, we do things to make ourselves feel better as well as to help others. And it's okay to say that. Mm-hmm. It's okay to say that this makes us feel good, because it should make everybody feel good to give back. So, yeah.
Are there a couple stories that you can share from your involvement in Shades of Pink, women that you have helped or families that you guys have helped? I know there are so many and you could write a whole series of books, but maybe a story or two that comes to mind.
Yeah. We, and I know I told you this a little bit earlier, we do not have direct contact with the clients because there's a process, but we do get so many thank you notes, and I do remember some of them because they're very impactful for me. That one woman said, "I'm sitting here in tears, crying because I'm looking at my apartment and I'm looking at my car sitting outside, but for Shades of Pink, I would have had to make that choice. Do I go to treatment or do I pay my lease and pay my car payment? And without you, I wouldn't have been able to do that. And thank you for getting me over that hump." And they're all along the same lines. They're just so thankful that they are ready to be evicted. And because we're able to provide enough support, that didn't happen. Cars are being, on the repossession list because they lost their job because they were so sick during treatment, that they couldn't pay the bills. And that's what we forget too, that so many people are working paycheck to paycheck. And when that's taken away, there may not be any other resource. And again, COVID hit all of us especially hard in that instance. The people who apply, the clients who apply, are anonymous to us. There's only one person in our organization who knows who they are. And so
it's mysterious. I love it. But I think it just makes it it's like a level playing field, if you want to say that. It just it makes things, okay, what does this person actually need? How can we work to support them? And it's so practical. That's what I love about it so much, Mary Pat, is we think about all these other things, okay, like, can I make like a care basket or whatever for, somebody who's sick, which all of those things are great. And I always encourage people on this podcast, write people little notes. If you know somebody who's going through cancer treatment, I had a friend who was going through cancer treatment, and she was a coworker, and all of us would give her little gift bags from time to time. And we would just come up with really fun, random things. And then she could open the gift bag when she was in doing her chemo treatments, and just little things to brighten her day. But we don't always think about these very practical things. Like, okay, how are they going to pay their bills? Okay, they have to take a leave of absence from work. Some places are able to give them a paid leave of absence, or, I know some employers have really tried to be supportive, but they're also running businesses too. And so sometimes people are not able to pay their bills and not able to take care of their kids, or not able just to get support or just have somebody come and like clean their house, right? Like, there are just so many little things like that we can do to support. And I love that Shades of Pink just steps in and supports these women and their families.
Yeah. And we're, again, at that community theme, all the money goes back, 100% goes back to Southeast Michigan. Mm-hmm. And so when they were going through this process, we're looking at geographics. Originally, we said we were just women, but you know what? Men have breast cancer too. So we've opened it up to that as well.
Check out One Girl Revolution's YouTube channel and hit subscribe for more podcast episodes, short documentaries, and other video content. The Girl Inside features the powerful story of a professor who teaches a life-changing storytelling class to incarcerated women at Cook County Jail. The second documentary from One Girl Revolution is coming soon, so make sure that you're the first to know by subscribing to One Girl Revolution on YouTube.
some people think, oh, because you have a really good job, you should have a lot of money saved up, and this isn't a problem. But we all run into financial problems, sooner or later, given the circumstances, and so we do not discriminate regarding, finances, and it's strictly based on need. We have a wonderful client services committee that reviews the applications, and I'd say we're averaging about, I think we were 10 to 14 clients a month that we were providing. And again, the amount that we're able to give is dependent on the donations that we have. And right now, it's over $2,000 a client per month. So,
wow, that's amazing. That's amazing. And I'm going to be sure to post the link in the show notes for people to donate and support your work with Shades of Pink. But Mary Pat, I'm so curious. You do all these amazing things. You've done so many amazing things. You've been involved in everything from, all the legal work that you've done to Impact100 to your photography, which is amazing too. And I'll post a link for that so people can check it out and get connected with you in that. And then Shades of Pink, what's the driving force? Like if you could get behind to the very root of why you do what you do, who you are, what drives you every single day, what would that root be?
I am so fortunate. All right, see, I'm gonna get teary-eyed again. I think it goes back to where I grew up and how I grew up, and here's those little things that, like my mom used to sew my dad vests, when men used to wear vests, and it's these little things that impact you. Someone came up to my dad and complimented him on his vest. He literally took it off and gave it to him. And my mom said, yep, I can just make him another one. It was, but I don't know. So, it's that giving back. I mean, whether or not that person needed it, he complimented my dad. And my dad wanted to in some way show his gratitude, I guess, for that. So I say, I have, come from a middle class, it's middle class. It's, Ypsilanti has, portions that, are, wealthier or not as wealthy. And so I grew up in a very diverse, town. And, I just feel like I'm just so blessed in so many ways with my health, my education, my family, my job,
Yeah.
so that these chance meetings that I have, like meeting you,
Mm-hmm.
who you are giving back, and that inspires me. So I do. I think I understood it better when I was on the board at Cranbrook, giving back to kids and education, and education has been an important part of our lives. And I don't know. Yeah. So I guess that's what inspires me. All those things.
That's beautiful. Yeah, that's so beautiful. And it's so important. And I just feel like you in your own journey, just put one foot in front of the other and taken opportunities that they've presented themselves. And that's really what I'm trying to do here with One Girl and just creating this podcast so that women can share their own stories. But I think there's this really beautiful thread where the majority of women that I've had on this podcast are the same way. They just are like, well, I didn't do anything. They don't see themselves as particularly extraordinary. It's like, well, I just did what I was supposed to do, or I just did what was right in front of me, or this opportunity was presented to me. And so I took it and ran with it. But to me, those are the most extraordinary women, are the women who just fully embrace the woman that they were created to be. And that is you, Mary Pat. And I'm just so grateful to spend this time with you and to be connected with you. Well, I will post all the links for people to stay in touch with you, for Shades of Pink, if they want to donate, to get involved, Impact100, because obviously we have a lot of people that listen in Michigan, but then also across the country, so they can get involved in Impact100 locally. I will put the link to Rachel Denhollander's podcast episode so people can go back and listen to that if they want to hear more about her story, because we mentioned her. And yeah, Mary Pat, how can people, I guess, support Shades of Pink? Let's talk about that. How can people, obviously they can donate, they can volunteer. Are there other ways that people can get involved?
Oh, absolutely. We are, like I said, we are growing exponentially, and it's, it's talent, it's treasure. If so, volunteering. We have our signature events. We have board positions open. We are always looking for someone with the skill set of marketing, finance. Always like to have someone. We have a great treasurer, but always like to have backup. Social media. Oh my gosh. I know I showed my age when I said I graduated high school in 1975. Social media is not my forte, and we could always, so it's all different skill sets that go along with the nonprofit. But then also it could be project based. We have social outreach, social worker outreach going on right now because most of our clients come through social workers, and just 2 to 4 to 6 hours on a telephone for, calling. So we have actual names that we can send information to rather than saying to whom it may concern. Our zoo walk coming up, we expect over 2,000 people to show up. So there's a sign up genius that I could send anybody who wants it. And there are so many different ways to volunteer for that, from greeters to walking through the zoo, which is always really fun. To putting together baskets. Donations, we're driven by donations, obviously. And awareness, I think, is, I say it's as important, because without the awareness, then, and I say it's a two-prong: donations and getting the word out to the clients that we're here.
Yeah. And I always tell people the easiest way, it's free. You can share something on social media. So share about Shades of Pink and encourage people to donate. If you are on your own journey with breast cancer, I'm sure they can reach out to you, or if you know somebody, please put them in touch with Shades of Pink. But I will put all those different links in the show notes for this episode.
Okay.
But Mary Pat, I'm just so grateful for our time together. But before I let you go, I always end this podcast on one question. So I'd like to ask you, if you could leave women and girls around the world with one message, what would it be?
I'm going to say something that I said early on in my law career, which I did not realize would be foreshadowing for what I am doing now, since I've been practicing a long time. Always look for the good. And if you see a wrong, try to right the wrong.
Well, Mary Pat, I'm so grateful for your time. I'm so grateful for all that you do. Thank you so much for being on the One Girl Revolution podcast. And thank you for all the great work that you do.
Oh, thank you. And thank you for the great work you do by putting up, all your podcasts. I've listened to so many of them, such amazing women. And you're right, you're giving women a voice, and that's so important. So thank you.
Thank you, Mary Pat. Please follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at One Girl Revo. That's the number one girl REVO. And you can find more information on One Girl Revolution at onegirlrevolution.com. That's the number one girlrevolution.com.